We discussed tonight the tools we can create to look at our life and know my life is good.
Yeah, I want to say that I did think about the class because I noticed more times like what my husband does good.
Oh, good. That's amazing. I like that.
I
How
didn't
often do people say they
but
notice what their husband does good? The end of that sentence is supposed to be bad, right? I noticed my husband did bad. No, I noticed my husband did good. Yes, that's wonderful, Rachel. Thank you. That was pretty fast. That was a pretty fast response. That's amazing. I appreciate that one. Rivka,
I remember you suggested to write it down, good things, but I didn't do that, but I was thinking about that.
Thinking is a great step. Writing is the next step. And move from writing to thinking. Go on Amazon and order for yourself a pretty notebook. When you have the pretty notebook sitting on your table, it's easier to get the next step of actually opening it up and writing something. Not so pretty that you don't want to ruin it. Just pretty enough. As someone once, actually someone from this class, bought me a beautiful notebook. Beautiful, like truly a beautiful notebook. And it was so beautiful, I never used it. Because I mean, she bought it, I'm sure, of my, how many times sharing that I write and I journal and thank you, God. And I of course, I say it enough times, hopefully other people will also start. So I don't know, inspired her to write, it inspired her to buy me a beautiful notebook. I never saw such a beautiful notebook before. And it was so beautiful, I never used it. Because I'm just going to use it just another journal to add to my stack. I've got to do something special with it. I could never figure out what was special enough. And one day I realized, because I gave it to someone else. So of course, that's the most special thing to do with something, is find someone else that you want to inspire to write. And what better way to write than to give them a beautiful notebook? Now they have a beautiful notebook, they're going to use it. So order yourself a beautiful notebook, keep it in a place that you're going to keep bumping into it, and then the writing will come. That's a good way to start.
Yeah.
And the other idea is buy a small notebook that you can like keep in your pocketbook, or you can like keep it out. It doesn't take up so much space, and then you can just always keep it with you. So then you can just jot things down as they occur because it's small. It doesn't take up so much space, so it's just like always there. So were you going to add something?
Like Rachel said, she was thinking about positive things, and I was trying to stop myself from thinking about negative things. And I'll tell you what was stopping me each time, because I think a previous class you were saying that when you think of the person, some action that it's negative or negative trait, you are feeding this negativity and it grows. And it's really powerful. It's a very powerful reason for me to stop that. So I was doing it for, I was stopping.
You were doing the opposite, and I totally understand what you were saying, because that fear of making something bad worse was a very strong motivation to switch the channels in your brain.
Right. And I was doing it not only with my husband, with other people with my loved ones, trying to switch from this, oh, I wish he wouldn't or she wouldn't, and trying to rewrite it because I understand if I think about this negativity, I'm giving it more life, more energy, and feeding it.
I agree with you. That is a thought of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, a very reputable source. And it is a very big motivation for me as well. Because, and again, some of us work more this way, some of us work more this way, some of us neither exactly helps, and some of us do both. But definitely, as Rivka's saying, this thought of, you mean when I think that I strengthen it? You mean what I don't like, I make worse? What I don't like, I make stronger? That's like, whoa, okay, that's big motivation to change the channels. Of course, as we were discussing last week, was the idea of how if we really shift in the positive, like Rachel's concept of noticing the good in the husband, in the action, the marriage, and that strengthens that, changes our focus. So the more we're focused in that direction, the more we behave in kind. You know, as we're looking, as we're perceiving, that's how we're responding. how we're seeing the situation, that's how we're responding to the situation. So the more we look and we see and notice and focus on the good, and of course there's both, every single one of us, myself, I assume all of us here, we have both. But when I focus on that good, and I'm like, oh, looking at you and seeing you're good, and looking at you and seeing you're good, and looking at you and seeing you're good, like you're such a wonderful person. No, you're such a wonderful person. I hope you're a wonderful person. You're my whatever, friend, relative, spouse, child, mother. It changes the way I interact. And that was the idea. So Rachel, did it change the way you interacted on some level? Noticing the good more?
Yet I didn't notice that yet.
Didn't do it enough. Okay, that would be the desired next step. That as you're noticing the good and noticing the good and noticing the good, on its own, it should shift the way you interact. As the good becomes stronger and stronger, it shifts the way you perceive the person. And it's just very simple. If you think you're dealing with someone that you think is really special, wonderful, good, you treat them a certain way. If you're dealing with someone that you think is not so special and not so wonderful, well, that also reflects in how you treat them, reflects in how you think about them, reflects in how you talk to them and about them. So it's just natural. You shouldn't have to like A, work on noticing, and then B, work on shifting because I'm noticing. No, the shifting because you're noticing just happens the more you notice, the more you notice, the more you notice. The shift might be a subtle shift and a subtle shift, but the shift definitely happens. Especially you're going to start writing it down with that pretty notebook. So it will be very good. All right. Well, that's great. So Rachel and Rivka, that's amazing. I really appreciate that because it's always nice when people take it home and then hopefully when you see the atmosphere in your house change. Or again, it isn't only about marriage. So in any relationship we're talking about, it's always wonderful when you might not exactly know why and when it happened, but the atmosphere changed. The atmosphere in the relationship changed. And that's always a very, very special moment when you realize that, when you're conscious that, wow, something did shift. That's really nice. So last week we focused on 3 ideas. I wanted to continue and we'll see how many we can discuss and try to integrate and really work through today. Because of course the goal isn't to cover ground, it's really to take a concept and really take ownership of it. Which doesn't mean that every idea you need to implement, but the more you take ownership of, the more options you have to see what works best for you. So something else that I think really helps in all relationships, again, as I keep saying, I'm saying marriage, you can translate that to whatever relationship you would like to work on, is to think of a setback in the marriage, a time that the relationship, whatever relationship you're thinking of, was challenged, that the relationship went through a rocky period, and how you changed because of it. Meaning, hopefully, ideally, a setback, one way or another becomes a springboard for something, for some other growth, for some other development. And sometimes it's in what you learned, how you grew. Sometimes because of the setback, you're a better person, you're a stronger person, you're more conscious, more caring. Maybe before you used to act a certain way and now you act differently. Before you used to think a way and now you think differently. Before you used to feel a certain way, now you feel differently. What's the point of doing this? We're talking about positivity. Why are we thinking about bad things that's happened in the past? Because again, we want to train our minds to go in a positive direction. And if we can look at challenges of the past and say, oh, and that caused something positive in the relationship. That was, as I said, the setback was a springboard. Positive things came from that challenge, from that loss of income, from that health crisis, from that child crisis, from that stress. Positive things came. What you're really doing, I'm just being very obvious and transparent here, you're really trying to train your mind to look at challenges that way. We all have challenges. I mean, if you don't have one today, maybe you'll get it tomorrow, maybe you have one last week, and maybe it'll be in a month from now. I'm not giving anyone any blessings that it should be today, you should have multiple. But at some point in your life and in your relationships, you have challenges. So when we can look at challenges with a positive set of eyes, and the best way to look at challenges with a positive set of eyes is to say, if I look in the past at things that have happened, I realize the challenge propelled a gain. The challenge propelled a growth. Anyone can relate to what I'm saying? And again, let's take it away from relationships and marriage. I just want to understand the concept. Anyone can think in their life once or multiple times where they went through something hard and they really saw the growth from that hard. If you can think of it, just raise your virtual hand. Time when you went through something hard and there was a lot of growth from, not that you want the hard, not that we're looking for the hard, not that we're asking God to send us hard, but that the hard did create a growth in the relationship, in you, in the situation, whatever the hard was, that happened because of that hard. And if it wasn't for that hard, that growth would not have happened. Well, not everyone's virtual hand is raised, but mine definitely is, and a few others. I'm not trying to convince anyone, meaning if no one can think of anything hard, that's great and beautiful, and I give you all blessings that so it should continue. If no one can think of any growth from hard, I assume there was. That's sort of my world vision, is that from the challenges we're given to propel our growth. You could say, well, I just failed every test because I don't see any growth from any. Maybe, but I think you're being a little harsh on yourself. I think probably there is growth that you just can't pin your finger on so clearly. But that's really how God works. That's really how life works. And the reason why I'm bringing it in this context is when we see it enough, are aware of it enough, note it enough, we're really training our mind to look at our life that way. And then we can be a positive person as we go through challenges. Yes, this is a challenge. Yes, this isn't what I'm looking for in life. Yes, God, I hope this changes very fast. But I also know there's going to be a growth. There's going to be something that's going to come out of it, which is the reason for all this. I guess I will lower my hand as well. If I get a little more Kabbalistic here, which I don't know if I need to, but there's a Kabbalistic concept called descent is for the purpose of ascent. We only go down to go up. That's the only reason we go down. And really, then we're not really going down. The down is part of the up. And in life, sometimes it takes a long time to see the up. You know, we had Chava's mother-in-law's vision looking back at 100 years. I'm sure she could give us example after example of this concept. But I'm sure in our own life, we can also give ourselves example after example of things that were hard, that were challenging, that were setbacks, and how we can understand actually why they had to be, why we needed to go through them, and how we changed and grew in a way wouldn't have happened otherwise. And again, it's really good to look in your own life. You're not looking at my life. You're not looking at someone else's life. Look in your own life and absorb the truth of this concept. Because it's a real shift in terms of being bitter over what's going on in your life to being optimistic over what's going on in your life. If you can really look in the past is our guide for the future. If I could look in the past and say, yes, that was hard, and look what came from it. And that was challenging, and look what happened because of that. And then you could say, also here, I have the optimism, I have the trust to know that also here, it's hard, and I'm not looking for hard. But I know this is going to be a springboard for something really good. So that's like a general mindset, a general perspective that again keeps us optimistic, keeps us trusting, keeps us positive, especially during harder times. Another idea This idea is maybe a little more marriage or family oriented. I wouldn't apply it as much in more casual relationships, though a deep friendship, it would also be appropriate. I probably wouldn't use it for like my relationship with my neighbor, if that's what you're working on. But definitely in a marriage, definitely between yourself and a parent, or between yourself and your child, or between yourself and your spouse, or between yourself and a real deep friendship, this is definitely a good thing to think about, which is, what are the values of this relationship? What are my values in this relationship? Meaning, what are my morals? What are my ideals? What are my commitments? What are my allegiances? What's my philosophy? Now, usually we are not thinking in philosophical terms. We just keep moving. But even though we keep moving, if we really stop and think, we have a philosophical perspective. We have a philosophical perspective on a marriage, what a marriage should be like, what's our ideal vision of the relationship, on our family, on a mother to children, on a child to parents, on a friendship. We all have a moral, ideal perspective on those relationships. It's really good, whatever relationship you're working on, again, unless it's a more superficial relationship, but good to work on because it's not positive, like maybe you with a coworker or you with a neighbor, or maybe there you want to work and make it more positive, but you don't as much have this philosophical perspective on the relationship. But in all significant relationships in your life, you really have, even if you don't think of it that way. But if you stop and think, you really have commitments to this relationship. Your vision of the relationship, what you feel is important in relationship, and you always want to like remind yourself what they are, because that keeps you aligned with how this relationship is supposed to look. Now, obviously, we're talking about your commitments in the relationship. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean the other person has those same commitments. Let's say it's in a deep friendship, and you could have certain visions of a friendship. Maybe in your vision, a friend is a friend no matter what the other person is doing. A trust is a trust no matter what they tell you. Or I will always be there for my friend no matter how inconvenient, no matter how much difficulty it is for me, I will always be there for a friend. That might be or might not be your vision of a moral value, your commitment, your ideal in this relationship with a friend. But it might not be the other person's. And sometimes, of course, that's where friction causes in a relationship, when you and the other person have a different set of values. Sometimes, like in a marriage, maybe you and your spouse started off on the same page on certain issues, and then maybe you changed or he changed or you both changed, and then your values shifted. Maybe you both started off prioritizing relationship, talking, communication, time together. And then maybe you shifted, or maybe he shifted. And then one of you are not focusing on that anymore, not prioritizing that anymore. That's no longer really an ideal. Well, that creates a lot of strain in a relationship. And it's good to like sort of understand that and then try to see how the two of you can realign, can come back to a shared value in the relationship. Can anyone feels comfortable to share a moral, a value in any relationship, just so people understand what I'm talking about? It's not only my voice. In any relationship that's important to you, you as a child, and that relationship with your parents, you as a mother, and that relationship with your children, you as a spouse, you as a friend, any of the morals, any of the values in those relationships.
It's kind of hard for me even pinpoint what a value in a relationship is. So maybe I'll try to name something and you can correct me. Like respect, also giving the other person space when the person needs the space, and respect that. and maybe, I don't know, maybe putting the other person needs first before mine, or maybe accepting. That's another one. Accept the other person the way the person is, not trying to change or criticize or okay. So
All of
maybe
those are values. Yes, every single thing you said is a value in a relationship. It might be, now again, for one person, all those values, they might have relationships with their spouse. Maybe someone else would have that with friends. Maybe somebody would have that a value in every relationship. Because it's possible to have a value in a relationship with your spouse, and you wouldn't necessarily have that. Like, let's say, putting the other person's needs first. Some people say, for my spouse, yes. For my friends, not always. Or some people conversely will do it for their friends and would not put that as a value with their spouse. So, and there's no right or wrong. It's not like a person will say, no, I wouldn't want that as a value, and I'm not going for that value. That's fine. No, there's no golden set of rules that you have to abide by to be the values of your relationship. But it's really good. And yeah, I agree with what Hava said, especially in our world. I don't know in Russia, but I can definitely say in America, our world doesn't talk about these things so much. We're much more like pragmatic. We keep moving. We do. And that's fine. And there's an advantage to that. But it's good every once in a while to stop and think, what are the underpinnings of my set of values in this relationship, in an important relationship, in a relationship I'm working on? Of course, relationships constantly grow and develop or turn in different directions. But if I'm working, for example, on my marriage, and I'm saying, like, take any one of the four Hava just said, a value in this relationship, and maybe that's a value in all my relationships, is mutual respect. I think the underpinning of a good, healthy relationship is there should be respect. Okay, that's a great value, and I would think that many of us probably have that value in relationships. So then I say, is my marriage in line with that value? Is my marriage in line with my goal? And if they say, it really is, that's great. That's going to bring a lot of positivity to my perspective on my marriage, because sometimes the big strokes are in place and we get stuck on the little details. And sometimes they're not, of course. But sometimes we really see, if I would say, and I'm not going to create 100 values and goals for my marriage, but if I would say my top 5, 3 out of the 5 are really strong, and the 4th one's happening, and maybe the 5th one's weak, my marriage is a lot better shape than it was actually. No, but there's this friction. Okay, there's what to work on. But there's a lot of alignment to those goals. Or, of course, maybe your answer is no. I have a lot of goals, and I don't see this marriage or my relationship with my mother or relationship with my children actually expressing that. Okay, so let me focus myself. How do I redirect? How do I get back in alignment with my goal? If I would say, for example, for myself, as a mother, I would probably say that I would have a very strong goal that my children should all feel loved. They should feel they have my time and attention when they need it. They get my time and attention. They should feel my respect. I'd say definitely all 3 of those points, I would think very strongly it will be part of my goals as a mother. I want my child to feel loved. I want my child to feel they're given time and focus. I want my child to feel they're given respect. And I love, and I do, and I this, and I that. Wait, stop. Let me think about those goals. Let me think, is my relationship with my children in consonance with those goals? Is that what the relationship looks like? Do they feel the love? Do they feel the respect? Do they feel the focus? Oh, thank God. Hey, there's a lot of good in this relationship. Got 2 out of 3. Okay, now I need to work on. Oh, I don't even have 2. I better start working harder here. Again, this is not something you do once a day or once a week, but it's good to stop and ask yourself, what are the values of this relationship? What are the morals of this relationship? What are the commitments of this relationship? And it could really, again, depending on A, figuring them out, and then B, seeing if the actuality is in alignment with his goals, really can refocus you, or actually can make you feel a lot more positive about the relationship than you realized. Another idea, sort of in terms of looking back and forward, is that sometimes we have unresolved issues in a relationship that still keep creeping up and disturb us from that positive, joyous, focused, centered space we want to be in the relationship. You can have unresolved issues with your parents. You can have unresolved issues with your children. You can have unresolved issues with your friend. You can have unresolved issues with your spouse. Any relationship that you've had for a number of years, there could be past baggage. There could be things in the past that were challenged, that were painful, and you didn't deal with them. Like a lot of times in life, we just, as I said, we keep moving. He said, she said, this one did this one did that, and you got hurt, but you kept moving. Now, very often, that's a really great thing to do. It's better than getting stuck. Yes, it is better than getting stuck. But when you keep moving, the question is, what does that mean? Does keep moving meaning you forgave, you moved on, you didn't let it hurt you? Or does keep moving meant you kept moving, burdened now by more baggage, burdened now by more pain? And sometimes, and it sounds crazy, but people 30 years later, 50 years later, 60 years later, could still have this wound inside, could still have an open wound from a painful thing that was never properly resolved. And it's not that uncommon. It's not that uncommon for a person to have an unresolved issue from the past that lingers, that festers, that spills over to other relationships. Meaning the unresolved issue could be something that happened when you were a child with your parents, but because of that, it's spilling into a lot of current relationships you have, not necessarily with your parents or with them, but with others as well. When we're trying to add positivity to our relationships, we want to really ask ourselves that question. Do I have some unresolved issues in this relationship that's still creating problems? Do I have unresolved issues from way before this relationship, but still there and still rearing its head and creating problems? And if yes, I'd like to really heal those unresolved issues. How do you heal something that happened to you 20 years ago or 30 years ago or 40 years ago or 50 years ago? If you're not in a relationship with that person anymore, anyway, how in the world do you heal that? Well, sometimes the healing just has to do with yourself. And sometimes you need to figure out what are the words you need to hear to heal. Like sometimes something happened to you when you were young and you didn't have the tools to do anything but keep moving and swallow. But now you're older, now you're wiser. Now you have many more tools. So maybe now you know what to tell yourself about something that happened a long time ago. Why am I raising this when we're talking about positivity? Because sometimes you might find it hard to be positive. And sometimes the reason you find it hard to be positive has nothing to do with today. It has to do with, for some of us, a long time ago, for some of us, previously in this relationship. And sometimes to be positive today, I need to take the time to heal myself from what was before. And again, a lot of times we don't like to acknowledge that. We want to keep moving. We keep moving. We're so strong. We keep moving. But if you keep moving with wounds and with pain and with gashes, it's not helping today. And that's why part of being positive is looking at yourself and giving yourself the time and the attention to heal. Something else sort of along these lines, but actually more going back to what I was saying before, that really helps us be positive in a very simple way. I think the past few things I was saying were a little deep, But don't worry, I got something really simple here, but very common to all of our human experience. I'm sure we'll all jump in your head. Myriads of examples is silver linings in our challenges, silver linings in hard situations. And we all have them. If you don't have them, you're not being honest, or you're with yourself, maybe. Meaning, hard situations are not usually uniformly black. They might be hard, but there was this plus, but there was that advantage, but I wasn't really focusing on it. And it's good to train ourselves again, training our eyes to think about the good that came with the bad, or the positive that maybe you didn't notice because you just like sort of took it for granted. Or maybe like even the hand of God. I actually had this experience this morning. This happened to me this morning. I was talking to someone whose grandchild just recently had heart surgery. And you talk to someone about a situation, you think of your own, situations. So I shared how my son Beryl, when he was born, well, he had holes in his heart, but those healed on their own. She's like, really? Wow. I'm like, yeah, I didn't think about that. So many things I was thinking about. And he was supposed to have this heart surgery when he was 3. And thank God the doctor who first said he was going to have it, in the end, in some conference table discussion with other cardiologists, they said, you know what, he's doing so fine. He doesn't need it. Why give heart surgery to someone that doesn't need it right now? Now, why am I sharing that? Because, I was grateful. And then I get moving. So I didn't really stop and appreciate and see the good and be so grateful. Something didn't happen. That would have been bad if it did happen. And it's like, we want to focus on the good. We want to train ourselves to be that type of person that celebrates the good. We want to be ecstatic about the good. We want to focus on the good, make it so big instead of and then whatever. And then I was saying to her also about my son, and then he had this operation at one point to put tubes in his ears, a very common operation that I pushed off for a long time because I didn't want to put him under anesthesia. And then the doctor said to me, oh, probably in 6 months, you're going to have this operation again. I'm like, what? She's like, well, yeah, the tubes fall out, the ears grow, and then you just keep having the operation. I was like, oh my gosh, it was so hard for me to agree to have it once. Well, he never had it since. And at a certain point, I asked the ENT, what about those tubes? She said, oh, they fell out a long time ago. I'm like, so why is he still hearing? She's like, I don't know. But he is. So did I stop and celebrate? Did I see the good and really focus on it? That's the type of people we want to be. The answer is I didn't. I was thinking about it today. I'm like, wow, thank you, God, that the holes healed on their own, that he never had that heart surgery, doesn't need it till today, that he only had that operation on his ears once and he never needed it again. And for some crazy reason, he just started hearing. I don't know. It worked out. I want to celebrate that because we want to celebrate that good. We want to see that good. Or as I'm saying, we want to see even the silver lining in situations. We want to be the type of person that celebrates that because we have the choice. We always have that choice to really be hyper-focused on this or on this. Well, we could be very realistic. We could be optimistic. We could be pessimistic. No, we just want to celebrate that good. And when we're really celebrating the good to the degree that we see the silver lining in situations, or even like how many times did you tell yourself, oh, I can never survive what I'm going through? Well, did you survive? Thank God you did. Thank God you're here to talk about it. That's good. That's positive. It worked out. I didn't even notice it worked out because by then I was on to something else. True. Stop and celebrate. Stop and realize maybe there were people in your life that made a big difference, that helped you, that got you through your situations. Did you ever stop and think about that? Did you ever stop and think about the redeemers in your life, the people in your life that helped you get through situations, or the events? Maybe you heard a line that you grabbed and was your lifeline, and you kept repeating it to yourself. Maybe it was a Torah thought. Maybe it was a wise expression. Maybe it was an experience. Maybe someone shared with you something and it so put into perspective what you're going through, because compared to what they're going through, wow, what I'm going through is nothing. Sometimes that happens to me. I'm not in such a good space. And then I hear about something else. I'm like, okay, wow. This is fine, God. Thank you for what I'm going through. I appreciate it. I take it. No problem. So we have that in our life all the time. We all have that in our life. And the question is, are we focusing on it? Are we focusing on the silver? Are we focusing on those redeemers, people, events, thoughts, teachings in our life? Are we focusing on the good, which means the other bad didn't happen and it's good? Are we celebrating that? That whole perspective really helps us be really, really, really positive. Even when things are not exactly as we'd love them to be, but when I keep searching for the good and celebrating that good, it shifts the general picture. Just like Rivka said before, Rivka said that something I said not last week, but in a different class, she really took to heart, which is so wonderful to hear someone taking something to heart. I so appreciated that. I'm celebrating that. Rivka said that when I said that, when you think about something bad, you're strengthening the bad. And she's like, whoa, I don't want to do that. Well, the converse is also true. When you think about good, when you prioritize good, when you focus on good, when that's what's on your lips and that's what's in your mind and that's what's in your heart, it strengthens it. It shifts the dynamics of what's going on. So those glimmers of silver, that person that was so helpful in that hard situation, or that book you read that helped you, or that movie you thought that gave you a thought, or that song, or that conversation with your friend, when you focus and see, there's a lot of pieces in my life that are helping me actually succeed in life and flourish in life and overcome the difficult and get past it and get to very positive places. It just gives you a general perspective. My life is good. That's where we want to get. We want to get to that space where you look at your life and you say, my life is good. For some of us, we're saying that because I've got good friends in my life. Hey, wasn't focusing on that, on the relationships I have. Maybe some of us have very long-term relationships, or some of us have relationships that haven't been for years, but they're very deep and strengthening. My life is good. I have relationships in my life. I have love in my life. I have certain pieces in my life that work so well. My life is good. So whatever is your silver, and I gave many different ideas here, because all of our lives are so different, but we all have this. We all have the choice to look and see the glimmerings of silver, to look and see that our life has so much good in it that we can truly tell ourselves, my life is good. Keep looking. Keep demanding from yourself to find those redeemers. What you learn, what you read, what you hear, the people in your life, the events you've gone through, that you can really tell yourself with honesty, knowing it's absolutely true, my life is good. I think this is